concerning the investiture yesterday. And indeed, Madam Speaker, I just want to say, as I indicated elsewhere, that I'm humbled by it, and I receive it on behalf of the many persons who have been through the journey with me so far and who have enabled me to add value to their own space and time. And if indeed the nation recognized that there was some value to that which was added, and the reward is a recognition in this way, I very deeply, humbly accept, and I accept truly on behalf of all. I want to join Dr. the Honorable Horace Chang in these expressions, especially that both of us have been workers together in the field for a long time. And we have worked in the West in particular for in excess of 27 years together. He certainly ahead of me before I got into the West, but I got in there 27 years ago. And since then, we've worked together and I've had great results, if I'm allowed to say so, for the country overall and for the people of St. James. Madam Speaker, the opposition was equally kind in terms of their remarks, and I want to associate myself with the comments that the acting leader of opposition business indicated. And I receive it also on behalf of Dr. Chan and myself. Madam Speaker, as I indicated, there will be one statement today, and the statement will be by the Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, the member for St. Elizabeth Southwestern. I now invite you to ask him to make the statement.
Member from St. Elizabeth Southwest, our Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining. Let's make him welcome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, honorable members of this Parliament, one of the major deterrents for entry into agriculture has for decades been predial larceny, or agricultural theft, as most jurisdictions now term it. A recent survey conducted by the ministry in 2024 estimates that agricultural losses from predial larceny to be about $14 billion per annum. A survey that was conducted in 2013 estimated these losses at about $8 billion per annum, which means, unfortunately, Madam Speaker, that can show the tangible steps that have been taken to address this problem. Madam Speaker, this government is a government of action, not of talk. Members, you will remember last year that we made changes to the Agricultural Produce Act, long promised changes that brought more severe penalties for predial larceny-related crime. This government, Madam Speaker, moved the penalties from a maximum fine of $250,000 to a maximum fine of $3 million. This government, Madam Speaker, moved the jail time from a maximum of 6 months in prison to a maximum of 3 years in prison. This government is serious about tackling agricultural crime. However, Madam Speaker, we are aware that penalties alone will not be enough to tackle predial larceny. We need structural change to our agri-food systems and to our policing of agricultural crime. It is for that reason why we have been working very closely with the Ministry of National Security and the Jamaica Constabulary Force to ensure that we increase our effectiveness to prevent predial larceny and to find and capture those involved. Madam Speaker, I want to commend Commissioner Kevin Blake, who has been building upon the work that was done by former Commissioner Anderson to provide greater focus on predial larceny. Additionally, Superintendent Pasco, who is based at our ministry, who has been a critical link and has provided clear leadership from the ministry to engage in this work. To this end, Madam Speaker, it is worth reminding this House that the police have put in place a predatory larceny prevention unit that reports to the Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of strategic operations, namely ACP Warren Clark. Under this government, Madam Speaker, 7 predatory larceny prevention units have been established across 19 geographic police divisions. And together with the ministry, we continue the efforts to reduce agricultural produce crimes. Madam Speaker, this is a precursor to where we are going in the near future. The plan with the JCF is to build out an agricultural protection division as a part of the JCF structure. And I want to commend Sergeant Steve Paul and Constable Pellington, who are already doing work in that regard and who have been working with various police divisions which have high incidence of agricultural crime. Madam Speaker, we're starting to see some results. As of September 30, we have made 79 arrests around predatory larceny, and that compares to the 78 arrests that were made for the entire 2023. I think the police deserves a big round of applause for that, members. Already for this year, up to September 30, we have 137 cases before the courts. In the entire year last year, we did 138 cases. So we're already trending ahead. Last year, we had 15 convictions in the entire 2023. Already we have 6 convictions thus far. Last year, we did 107 farm watch programs. And this is important because what we're doing are organizing our farmers into groups so that they can provide critical watch for their farms. This year, we've already done 149, surpassing the 107 done in the entire year last year. The police have conducted 3,481 operations up to September 30. We have had 2,279 sensitization sessions, which already eclipses the 1,600 and 1,763 sessions that were done in 2023. Madam Speaker, the predatory larceny focus patrols continue in 2024, with the number of focus patrols to date being 11,488 when compared to 12,000 for the entire year last year. Madam Speaker, in addition to crops and livestock, our predatory larceny prevention program also places significant focus on the fisheries sector. And to date, 5,719 fishing beach operations have been conducted, which is again more than was done last year, where we conducted 4,863. So, Madam Speaker and members, you can see in almost every area we have been doing more in the fight against predatory larceny. Additionally, at the ministry, Madam Speaker, we've doubled the size of the predatory larceny unit, and we provided a new Toyota Hilux motor vehicle to ensure that we increase mobility for the team. This is not talk, members. This is action. Action to fight for our farmers across the length and breadth of Jamaica. There is, however, another element that is needed. That is more boots on the ground. You will recall in my sectoral debate in May of this year that I advised that by December 2024, we would start the process for our first cohort of 100 agricultural wardens under a 3-year agricultural wardens program. In keeping with the objectives of the Predatory Larceny Prevention Act, the agricultural wardens program is to put more boots on the ground to strengthen the fight against predatory larceny and to bring about positive change in the sector. This crucial initiative is an essential part of our government's ongoing commitment and efforts to reduce the scourge of predatory larceny on the agricultural sector, thereby supporting growth, food security, and rural transformation. Madam Speaker, members of this House, I am pleased to advise that the Jamaica Constabulary Force has commenced the recruitment drive for the agricultural wardens. Thus far, Madam Speaker, advertisements were placed in the Daily Gleaner, and I'm pleased to indicate that today, as we speak, at the Godfrey Stewart High School in Westmoreland, over 100 persons are there signing up to become our first set of agricultural wardens. I've gotten some pictures, Madam Speaker. This is really a joy to see. Clearly, this is a first step, but they had people who were there before 8 o'clock to sign up for the agricultural wardens programs. I did see a number of ladies as well wanting to be involved in the agricultural wardens program. Madam Speaker, our first 100 agricultural wardens, once recruited, will participate in an extensive training program to include, among other areas, enforcement models, fundamentals of police duties and procedures, firearm training, defensive tactics and drills, community-based policing, evidence recording, court preparation, target hardening, and agricultural modules, including livestock classification, agricultural practices, the ministry's traceability systems, and legal modules, including legislation, case preparation, mock trial exercises, and also motorcycle and motor vehicle driving certification. Members, the curriculum has been completed, and we expect that training will start January 2025. Madam Speaker, just to remind this Honorable House that what we envision is a 3-year program to recruit 300 wardens to be placed in Preda-Lastly hotspots across the island. It is estimated that it will cost $1.8 billion over the 3 years, with $390 million being expended in the first year. The program, for which provisions have already been made in the Preda-Lastly Prevention Act, is projected to result in increased enforcement actions against perpetrators, improving detection, prosecution, deterrent rates, enhanced surveillance, patrols, and community awareness, and reducing economic losses sustained by farmers because of Preda-Lastly. This will further result in increased agricultural productivity and profitability in the sector, ensuring food security and economic stability. Madam Speaker, we continue to work with our critical stakeholders, including the Ministry of National Security and the Jamaica Constabulary Force, which entities continue to support this important initiative. As we go through the final approval stages through Cabinet, Madam Speaker, to ensure the success of this initiative, a joint high-level committee of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining and the JCF and the Ministry of National Security will monitor and manage the implementation of the program. Madam Speaker, the Agricultural Wardens Program is an important step towards safeguarding the agricultural sector, especially as we continue to encourage greater investments in agriculture to boost expansion and exports and to support our commitment to food security and rural development. Members, it is worth noting that our next recruitment drive is scheduled for the Area 4 headquarters at Harman Barracks, that is at Deanery Road, on the 9th of November 2024 at 8 p.m. Additionally, a number of other recruitment drives are being planned island-wide, and we're encouraging all qualified individuals to apply. The minimum requirement is to be between the age of 18 to 35 years, have at least 3 CSEC subjects, including citizen guilds, and also persons who are interested can visit the JCF website at www.recruiting@jcf.gov.jm to complete applications. Madam Speaker, we know that it will take some time for us to tackle the issue of Preda-Lastly, but we are taking deliberate steps to ensure that our farmers and fishers can reap what they sow and can truly benefit from their hard work, especially those farmers in our livestock sector. We will protect our farmers. We will grow our agricultural sector. We are taking the bold steps needed to protect the future of agriculture and to create a more prosperous and sustainable tomorrow for our farming and fishing communities. Thank you, members.
Responding will be the member from Clarendon Southwest. Minister, I must commend you exactly on point in time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And also thanks to the minister for his statement to the House earlier. Um, Madam Speaker, the issue of predial larceny touches and concerns every single rural constituency in Jamaica, and particularly those constituencies that have a large farming base. Like my constituency, like Southeast St. Anne, like Central St. Mary, we have faced firsthand the scourge of predial larceny. And it poses a threat to our efforts to expand the industry. In fact, what it does, it poses a deterrent as there's investment hesitancy where the issue of agriculture is concerned. But, Minister, my question is this. I understand that the Predial Larceny Prevention Act provides for the recruitment of wardens, and you're going through with that. But the what is being offered to the wardens, why not offer it to the farmers? And here's the reason why I said this. 90% of the time, it is the farmer that first confronts the person who is out there, entering, breaking and entering their farms, right? And so I see firearm license training for the warden. And I'm saying, what about the farmer? Because the reality is that between the point of detection and apprehension, there's a gap, there's a lapse. 90% of the time, they may not even be any apprehension. So why not provide this opportunity to the farmers? It's 1.8 billion. Well, we have to go there. It's 1.8 billion. It's going to cost over 3 years. If the farmers get these very same training, if some of the farmers are certified as district constables, we would save this 1.8 billion. It would be a massive saving to us as a government. So as far as I'm concerned, I believe that the farmers should be given priority where the recruitment for wardens are concerned, and that the farmers should be given access to these basic training that is highlighted here in your report to Parliament. Right? So as far as I'm concerned, Minister, predial larceny is something we all have to address. I'm happy to hear that the police now has a designated predial larceny unit. Because 2 years ago, that was an issue that was raised here by me in terms of the fact that there was none. So I'm happy that you have made that move. It's a very good move, but we need to expand on it. One Hilux can't do nothing at all. You and I know that. You reported one Hilux, laughable. I mean, we need a fleet of Hiluxes. We need a fleet, a whole fleet of vehicles dedicated towards predial larceny prevention. Because the word prevention is not meaningless. Right? And in order to prevent something, you have to deter. What you're focusing on here is actually apprehension and prosecution. The deterrence is what is important. And the deterrence starts with the farmers, arming and protecting the farmers, giving them the tools they need to protect themselves. So that the persons who want to come and break and enter onto the farms don't the second guess themselves, because they know that they might be confronted with resistance from the farmers. So, Minister, we look forward to seeing how this whole thing will work, but I think there's another way, another solution, which is ensuring that the farmers themselves are the ones that become the wardens and are the ones that are entrusted with the personal responsibility to protect themselves and protect their livelihoods. Thank you very much, Minister.
There is a question from the member sitting in the seat at St. Anne Southeast.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thought you don't know me by now, though. I think one of the most interesting experiences I've had in my years as a member of parliament was seeing when a group, two people, stuff an entire cow into a pro box. No, it's a serious something. No,
My thing is, what is the question of the minister?
I'm getting there.
All right, so you have to get to the question. So this is the section when you are no longer allowed to make speeches, as would have been done by the member who speaks as the individual
But you're taking up my time, Madam
responding.
Speaker.
No, it's my duty to do
All
so,
right,
and it is your duty to get to the question.
got you. My two questions are these, Madam Speaker. And I never thought I would get here, but veterinary services, private veterinary services, Minister, offer the insertion into dogs and to cats a chip. And I remember years ago. And what happens is that chip, you can read it, it's put here. The question I have for you, as a part of your predial larceny plan and strategy, is it that you will provide, or does RADA or the Ministry of Agriculture have the ability or the hope to provide this kind of technology to livestock? Because from my experience, it is mainly livestock that is stolen as a part of predial larceny. The pigs, the goats, the cows, and other livestock, not mainly vegetables. If I may be permitted, Madam Speaker, to ask a second question. Thank you so much. Much obliged. My second question is, I know the geography of most parishes. And based on how RADA is set up, extension officers have to traverse sometimes two parishes. And
Member,
mainly,
so all of what you said before is not a question. And it is one of the things that we have to do better at. We have to get to the question.
I, I notice you're a little impatient today, Madam Speaker, because normally you're not this impatient.
So the leeway member allows too much
I hear you.
vacillating.
I'm not
And
vacillating,
therefore,
though.
I am asking members to think about their question and get straight to the question. Going forward, it is really one of the hallmarks of responsible behavior that we would love to have in the house. So member, think about the question and then get straight to the question, member.
Huh? I'll try and be as responsible as
And,
possible.
and I must tell you, the member from St.
God.
Anne Southeast is not as irresponsible as many other members. So it is rough that the example is being marked down now. But once persons continuously, which you have been doing, members, abuse the opportunity to ask questions and make statements, and it is regularly done, there is going to come a time when the speaker will have to hold you strong and directly to the rules. So members,
I'm the scapegoat.
the
then, Madam
question.
Speaker. And it's fine.
Go ahead, member.
So, Minister, the second question that I have for you is, in your mandate to deal with predial larceny, since you have made so many arrests, and I'm trying to frame this question because the context has to do with violence that is already existing with some of the farmers that just take matters into their own hands. I'll leave it there. I can speak to my constituency in particular. What mechanism will you have in place, therefore, to ensure that if you have these farmers' neighborhood watches kind of situations and the training for wardens, is there any physical tools, i.e. bullhorns, i.e. motorcycles? What is it that they can, because once another car comes from Clarendon, for example, over to St. Anne, by the time the police get there from Claremont, they are gone.
The next question comes to us from St. Andrew South, opposition leader, and the final question from St. Mary Central. Thanks, members.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll try to comply with your injunction. Um, Minister, looking at the legal framework that now exists, I think there's more work to be done. For example, the Pre-Deal Larceny Prevention Act. Several of the offenses under that act, which actually touch and concern the operations of agricultural wardens, have penalties which are long out of date and need to be modernized. And my question is, when will you address this? So, for example, under Section 15 of the Pre-Deal Larceny Prevention Act, if you're in possession of clothing or other accoutrements furnished for the use of agricultural wardens and you can't satisfactorily account for your possession of that, or you hold yourself out essentially to and impersonate an agricultural warden, the offense is punishable by a penalty not exceeding 20,000 Jamaican dollars. And we know that this is a money business. This Pre-Deal Larceny business is a money business. So the penalties have to be strong. So that is one example. And there are others in the Act, Section 16, which deals with wearing the uniforms of wardens and so on. So my first question is, when will you complete a review of the Pre-Deal Larceny Prevention Act, which is the primary statute dealing with this offense, or this range of offenses, to upgrade the penalties and make them really have an appropriate deterrent effect on persons who are inclined to carry out the dastardly practice of stealing people's agricultural goods, whether it be produce or livestock? That's my first question. My second question relates to the offense of Pre-Deal Larceny in the Larceny Act, which I think also needs to be upgraded and modernized in relation to the penalties there, which have not been reviewed for a long time. And the question is, when will that be addressed? And lastly, Minister, the
It's 2024, and you're still using the same cable network? Frontier Fiber is here, right now for you. 25 times faster uploads than cable. 100% fiber internet, powered by the speed of
asset forfeiture and really getting the money out of crime. And this is a very critical thing in the fight against crime. And my question to you is, there are a number of offenses scheduled to the Pre-Deal Larceny Prevention Act, the Country Fires Act, the Larceny Act, and certain sections in the Larceny Act, including larceny of cattle, simple larceny, killing of animals with intent to steal, Pre-Deal Larceny itself, and so on. Malicious injuries to Property Act, including destroying or damaging trees in gardens, destroying or damaging trees elsewhere than in gardens, etc. And the Trespass Act, certain provisions there. When are we going to bring those predicate offenses really around agricultural crimes under the POCA regime? All it takes is a ministerial order by the Minister of National Security to do it. And it's something that's long overdue, and I commend it to you. I think there needs to be an urgent review of the statutes that I've mentioned and the bringing of any serious agricultural crimes under the regime of POCA. Thank you.
Member from St. Mary's Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Minister, you mentioned about the training of agricultural wardens. You did not indicate whether they'll be given the power of a district constable. The fact is, you mentioned all the various methodologies and training program and the modules that they'll be exposed to. But I see we're coming to policing, and we all know that Pre-Deal Larceny has to thrive because people in the community are part of the enterprise when others come from outside. The other matter, Minister, is that you said the second recruitment will take place in Kingston, Harmon Barracks. But we have Pre-Deal Larceny primarily across the country, and I understand that it is designated to have it across the entire divisions across the police divisions across the country. But wouldn't it be good optics to have the second one outside of Kingston instead of having it in Kingston?
Thank you very much, members. And I'll start from the member from Central St. Mary and work my way back up. So the first recruitment is in Westmoreland, all right? And the idea is to pull from all over. So we will have, the majority of the recruitment will happen in rural Jamaica. But again, you also have to look at some of the population centers. And the truth is, we do have challenges in St. Catherine in relation to Prairie Larceny. And what we also see is a number of rural people have relocated to Kingston. So sometimes you have to draw from that Kingston cohort where you get people from all over and redeploy them to where they're originally from. So again, we started in Westmoreland. We will be all over. The next one is in Kingston. The agricultural wardens, yes, under the act, they do have the power of a district constable. So they are, and probably I should make this clear, the agricultural wardens will be members of the police force. There will be members of the JCF. And that is one of the things that we have been able to streamline in this new dispensation of agricultural wardens. So if you realize it is not the ministry going out to recruit agricultural wardens, it's the JCF. And they will go through police training and probably so indicated it will address some of the concerns that the member from Southwest Clarendon has, and I'll come to it. But in fact, what we're doing is forming a formation within the police force that focuses on agricultural crime, right? That is exactly what we're doing. So we would have started, and I'll come back to it to the end. So they will have police powers, member. In relation to the member from St. Andrew South, so some amendments were made to POCA. I will make some checks because I know that definitely in relation to anti-gang legislation, that persons who involve in agricultural crime that associate themselves in gangs can be brought under that legislation. So I will make some checks to see if some of the offenses that you raise have been covered. Yes. No, so I'm going to treat with those other two matters. In relation to the Prairie Prevention Act, the review has already been done. In fact, we're on the final draft now of those amendments. I'm trying to bring it to the House in this cycle before the end of the year. You know the back and forth with drafts. So you know when we say we're on the final draft, it means we've gone through 3 drafts already. So we're now on the final draft, looking to go to LegCom in this month or early November and try to get it to the House before the end of the year to make those changes that you would have highlighted. And the same in relation to Prairie Larceny under the Larceny Act. In relation to the member from Southeast St. Anne, no, so again, because there will be police officers, the intention is to also have them have the physical tools that they need, including mobility, right? Including mobility, including one of the things that we discussed at length, that wasn't probably originally envisioned when you thought about warders, is whether they would be armed. But in this day and age and how agricultural crime has evolved, that's why we went in the direction of having them as full members of the police force. So they will have the physical tools. Now, we are putting in place traceability systems. So we have started with a national animal identification database. We've started with cattle. As it is now, it doesn't have a chip, but they have a barcode, right? And we have been tagging, and we have reached over 80%. We've reached a critical mass of the cattle that has been tagged. Clearly, it's a consistent process. What we're now looking on is what is the best model for our small ruminants, because again, we're dealing with much larger numbers than our cattle farmers. So, you know, Minister Hutchinson had spoken about it before in terms of looking at the technology that is employed across the world, that is employed here for some of our pets, and it's something that we're looking at. In relation to the, well, I have a note. All right. So the member from Southwest Clarendon, and in his response, and I must say that the response, especially in relation to highlighting the lobby that we both have had around the perennial larceny being elevated in the JCF. I'm very happy that we have seen that come to fruition. And it's a pity that you no longer speak on this area, because I did find that your utterances were much more useful than what we get now coming out of the spokesperson. So I will say a couple of things. So yes, member, you're correct. We have been able, through the JCF, and I want to commend the JCF, we now have a predal larceny unit that works with 7 predal larceny units across 19 geographic divisions. That is work, very, very good work. But where we want to go is to have the agricultural protection division. So that's important. One of the things that we do in our formation of farmers watch groups, member, and you have made this point. And when I go out in the field, the farmers have made that point. Not only do we mobilize our farmers around watching their property, but also how can they make the approaches, the necessary applications, so those who want to arm themselves can arm themselves. We do have a firearms policy that people and a number of our farmers have gone the route of applying for their firearms and are legal firearm holders. And what we do provide is some advice for them in that regard in the Farmers Watch groups. So I think through that, those farmers who want to do that level of self-protection, we are willing to see how we can assist them in that regard. And just to highlight, additionally, we are working on, well, past working on. So the Hilux is in relation to the internal ministries team. And for a long time, they complained about not being able to traverse some of the nooks and crannies. But on the police level, we have gotten good support from Japan, and we are getting a fleet of vehicles for predal larceny specifically. And that will be for our police force. Yes, I want to commend the ministry and the Minister of Foreign Affairs for her work in that regard. I know that is in train. We do expect to have them this year or early next year. So in essence, Madam Speaker, I'm very happy that we're moving. The reality is that the Predal Larceny Prevention Act was passed in the 1980s, and it called for agricultural wardens. And I think during the 80s, we tried a pilot, but we never really got going. This government will deliver to the farmers more boots on the ground to help in the fight against agricultural crime. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Announcements, bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally. On the questions and answers to questions, Dr. the Honorable Christopher Tufton is to provide a response to question 1, standing on the question notice paper. I believe he is ready to do so. It is standing.
Yeah.
The member from St. Andrew South.
Yeah. There's no prompt, but I'd be grateful if the question standing in my name could be answered. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And as a response to these questions, Madam Speaker, I'd just like to outline that they are quite lengthy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just like to outline that the questioner, my colleague on that side, asked a number of questions, so it's quite lengthy, the responses. So I just want to crave your indulgence on members of this House as I seek to go through. All right, so question 1, are there 11 HDUs, that's high dependency units, spread across 6 hospitals in Jamaica that were acquired under the PROMAC? If not, how many HDUs are there in Jamaica and how many hospitals have them? Answer, no to question A, 1A. In keeping with the objective of the PROMAC, 7 neonatal and maternal high dependency units were placed in 4 hospitals. Maternal and neonatal high dependency units at Cornwall Regional and Mandeville Regional were initially included to arrive at 11, but the project scope was later adjusted. Note should be made that although infrastructure was not provided for Mandeville Regional Hospital and Cornwall Regional Hospital under PROMAC, the project provided equipment that equips existing spaces to provide neonatal intensive care unit services at those institutions. 6 hospitals therefore benefited from the project as was initially conceptualized. 3 maternal HDUs, this is high dependency units, were built at the Victoria Jubilee Hospital, the St. Anne's Bay Regional Hospital, and the Spanish Town Hospital, with a total of 17 maternal high dependency beds. 4 neonatal HDUs were built at the Bustamante Hospital for Children, the St. Anne's Bay Regional Hospital, the Spanish Town Hospital, and the Victoria Jubilee Hospital, with a capacity for up to 50 neonates depending on the type and intensity of the support required. In addition to PROMAC HDU, Madam Speaker, colleagues, there are ICUs and HDUs throughout the system that can provide care for the general population, including maternal HDU care for those hospitals that do not have a specified maternal HDU. These hospitals include the UHWI, that's the University Hospital of the West Indies, Cornwall Regional, Falmouth, and Mandeville Regional. In terms of the University Hospital of the West Indies, this is a tertiary hospital and one of the major referral centers in the island. It has intensive care and high dependency care capacity. This hospital has 2 ICUs, ICU A with 10 beds and ICU B with 8 beds. There is also a high dependency unit that has 3 beds. UHWI also has a neonatal intensive care unit with 5 beds. There is no specific maternal high dependency unit, and patients are admitted to the general ICU. 2, Southern Regional Health Authority. There are 4 hospitals in Sierra with capacity for high dependency or intensive care. These are Kingston Public Hospital, Victoria Jubilee Hospital, Bustamante Hospital for Children, and Spanish Town Hospital. The KPH has 7 ICU beds and 4 high dependency beds. Victoria Jubilee, with the expansion from PROMAC, can accommodate 16 beds in the neonatal intensive care unit and a maternal HDU with 7 beds. The Victoria Jubilee Hospital will start using the PROMAC maternal HDU this month. Split units have been put in place to allow the space to be used, and a contract has been signed with CAC to fix the central air system. So there are some challenges there which we're trying to work through, Madam Speaker, colleague. The Spanish Town Hospital neonatal intensive care unit has 6 cubicles and 2 isolation rooms that can accommodate a total of 10 cots, and the maternal HDU has 5 beds. There has also been the conversion of a ward to a 4-bed HDU, as well as an isolation area created that can accommodate 10 beds that can serve as an HDU. The Bustamante Hospital for Children has a 5-bed ICU and a 10-bed cardiac ICU. The PROMAC neonatal intensive care is functional and is presently housing the special care nursery. Critical cases are managed in the neonatal ICU, but patients requiring mechanical ventilation are managed in the general ICU. With the expansion of plans for Spanish Town Hospital under the health system strengthening, Madam Speaker, there will be an additional 6 ICU and 6 HDU beds that will be established at that location. Capacity is also being developed at the National Chest Hospital for 5 HDU spaces. 2 are presently functioning. In terms of the Western Regional Health Authority, there are 2 hospitals in the Western regions with capacity for high dependency or intensive care. These are the Cornwall Regional Hospital and the Falmouth Hospital. The facility at Falmouth Hospital is an extension of the Cornwall Regional Hospital in response to the relocation of services from Cornwall Regional due to air quality issues. Presently, Madam Speaker, at Cornwall Regional, there are 4 HDU beds and 6 potential neonatal intensive care spaces, that is, spaces that can be created if needed. The ICU at Falmouth Hospital has 2 functional spaces. The return to the Cornwall Regional building will see reestablishment of 8 ICU beds, 40 HDU, including maternal HDUs, in HDU beds. And the Western Child and Adolescent Hospital will have 15 ICU spaces with at least 4 neonatal intensive care spaces. So that is to come hopefully over the next year, Madam Speaker, additional capacity. Northeast Regional Health Authority, there is a capacity for high dependency care at the St. Anne's Bay Regional Hospital. This was provided through PROMAC and includes a 6-cubicle neonatal intensive care unit that also has 2 isolation rooms and a 4-bed maternal HDU that also has additionally 1 isolation room. The cubicles in the neonatal intensive care can hold 2 to 6 cots depending on the level and care being offered. The maternal HDU at this time can also be used for general HDU admissions. The Health System Strengthening Project, again funded by the government of Jamaica, IDB, will build a 6-bed ICU and 6-bed HDU to provide a full complement of HDU and ICU capacity to the region over time, over the next year or so. Southern Regional Health Authority. Southern Regional only has HDU capacity at the Mandeville Regional Hospital, where a 2-bed HDU has been put in place. There is a neonatal intensive care with 7 spaces. Additional capacity is needed, and we accept that in this region, as it depends heavily on transfers to Sarah or Western region. So where we have an overflow, we do transfers. All hospitals with surgical services have a recovery room, Madam Speaker. Recovery room spaces are not counted above. For hospitals with no HDU or ICU, patients may be temporarily managed in the recovery room where the support services will exist, while transfer is arranged to hospitals with capacity for HDU and ICU care. This capacity is not only dependent on a space or a ventilator, but also skilled staff and supporting diagnostic and treatment services. In terms of ventilators, Madam Speaker, the number of functioning ventilators vary from time to time, dependent on if ventilators are out for servicing or repairs. I think we have spoken to this recently with the discussions around ventilators. While this is desirable, not all potential ICU spaces have a ventilator, as other measures may be put in place to aid ventilation, such as CPAP machine used in neonates, which keeps the airways open, or patients may be able to breathe spontaneously but require other critical intensive support. For example, persons with injuries such as severe burns, or patients previously on ventilators may be weaned off the ventilator as their condition improves. There is always a need, of course, based on the question asked, for more ventilators, but it is true to say we have more ventilators in the system now than we have ever had before, largely influenced by the COVID pandemic, Madam Speaker. And that ranges at any one time from 80 to 120. How many of these PROMAC are functional as of June 1, 2024? That's a question. Of the 7 HDUs provided by PROMAC, 6 are functional, 2 at Spanish Town Hospital, neonatal and maternal, 2 at St. Anne's Bay Hospital, neonatal and maternal, 1 neonatal at Victoria Jubilee Hospital, 1 neonatal at Bustamante Hospital for Children. Work, as said earlier, is presently underway to restore services at the maternal HDU at Victoria Jubilee, which is the only unit not operating at this time. There were no HDUs provided for Cornwall Regional and Mandeville Regional under PROMAC. However, Madam Speaker, colleagues, with equipment provided under PROMAC, the service is being provided. So PROMAC did provide equipment, and those equipment have been deployed at those institutions, even though a specific area was not built out under PROMAC. Also, UHWI and Falmouth HDUs not provided through PROMAC are functional. Number 2, how many doctors and nurses have been trained under the PROMAC program? Total of 100 doctors and 154 nurses have been trained in specialized areas. B, how many of these cohorts of doctors and nurses have left the public system? That is to be determined, Madam Speaker, archive training registry were retrieved. However, we have not yet confirmed the status of the 254 trained doctors and nurses with the Human Resource Department in the health regions. So a little more work has to be done there. But it is fair to say that we have lost some to migration and international recruitment. How many of those doctors and nurses are still employed? And the response would be the same. That is being checked to try and get the exact numbers. Note, however, that the development and review of guidelines for management of priority disorders in pregnancy and the perinatal period continues. There's training done annually on these guidelines to continuously equip new and existing staff to manage these patients. In addition, maternal and neonatal deaths and near misses are reviewed and services are improved to address any outstanding issues. In other words, Madam Speaker, colleagues, the training is ongoing every year. So whether they are new persons or persons in the system, they have to go through refresher or additional training. How many ambulances, 3A, how many ambulances have been acquired under the PROMAC program? And B, as of June 1, 2024, how many of these ambulances are in operation? Madam Speaker, 6 Mercedes-Benz ambulances were procured and delivered to support the following institution: Alexandria and Chapelton Community Hospitals, Mandeville Comprehensive Clinic.
TD Bank sees millions of transactions, but we never forget it's the humans behind them that matter most. So even though we're leading,
it's a kind of statistics with explanation, which I appreciate you're allowing me to do. The Mercedes-Benz ambulances have been challenging to keep in service. They do not handle the terrain very well, according to the technical team involved in maintenance of these vehicles, especially in rural areas. The parts have to be sourced from Europe and are usually not stocked here, and there are long waiting times to receive parts. Also, they have been very expensive to repair. We have just received parts for one of the ambulances that is in for repairs. Another is waiting repairs, and one in Sablamar have been down for prolonged periods, repaired at a significant cost, and down again as this was being prepared. It is now being assessed to determine the way forward, whether we should take it out of service altogether or try to repair it again. However, the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the regional health authorities have been continuously adding to the fleet of ambulances island-wide, Madam Speaker. So if it's not being done by the Mercedes ambulances, then it's done by a Toyota or some other make. And just to note, in terms of data, there are 58 working ambulances across the regional health authorities, 12 in Sierra, 14 in Nera, 12 in the Western region, and 20 in Southern region. These number includes the PROMAC working ambulances, which when I checked in our 2017 report, Madam Speaker, we had 42 working ambulances in the regions. So we have actually increased the numbers and continue to increase the numbers. In fact, there are some on order now as we speak. We are now 16 ambulances above what was the case in 2019. Number 4 was the report arising from a review conducted by the Chief Government Anesthetist submitted to the Ministry of Health and Wellness in or about 2021 related to the poor state of intensive care units and HDUs in Jamaica, including those funded under the PROMAC program. And the response is as follows. The government anesthetist presented a document dated 23rd March 2020 based on our internal information, titled Critical Care Plan for the Management of COVID-19 Disease in Jamaica. This document was a proposal as to how, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, COVID treatment centers and support centers were to be established and how they were to be equipped, staffed, and utilized. We are not aware, this is from my team, that there is a 2021 document that is being referred to in this question, but certainly a 2020 document. And the question B is, if so, what steps have been taken to address the issues and concerns raised in that report? In preparation for the anticipated increase during the COVID-19 pandemic in cases requiring respiratory support to MOHW, we put plans in place to, one, increase ventilator capacity, which we did, well over 100%, and that has been discussed before. Increase number of critical care spaces, which we did through the COVID wards and some of the other makeshift arrangements, some of which were accounted for in my previous comments. And increase availability of oxygen, which we did for the most part, working with the sole supplier, and subsequent to recently post-COVID, of course, we now have at least one additional independent supplier, which is based at St. Anne's Bay Hospital. Question C, if any such steps were taken, why has this not averted the current crisis of elevated levels of maternal, infant, and neonatal mortality affecting the health sector? Answer, factors affecting maternal, infant, and neonatal mortality vary and not only dependent on the availability of a high dependency or intensive care space. Maternal deaths are a class 1 notifiable event and are reported to the National Surveillance Unit. Each case is investigated to determine any factors that may have contributed, Madam Speaker, to a poor outcome so that the issues can be addressed. A 4-delay model is used to classify the contributing factors. Delay 1 has to do with seeking care. Delay 2, reaching care. Delay 3, receiving care. And delay 4, receiving appropriate care after reaching the health facility. From our analysis, delay 1 and 4 are most frequent. The Ministry of Health is taking steps to address these issues, Madam Speaker, in the following way. And so, in other words, how the data is classified based on the investigations after the fact, case by case, is to determine where the central challenge lay in terms of the risk to the mother or the child. And those 4 categories are classified, and then steps are taken depending on where they fall to correct the situation. And we have found that delay 1 and 4 are most frequent. So initiatives in response to delay 1, revision of the patient-held maternal record book with guidance to mothers when to consult their healthcare provider urgently. Health education sessions are conducted at all public antenatal clinics where pregnant women receive care across the nation. Procurement of consultancy services is underway for the development of and implementation of a 15-month national antenatal care and well-being communication campaign to raise public awareness on the warning signs in pregnancy and the need to seek care early. An introduction of the Snuggle Nest initiative in 2023 to provide incentives to pregnant mothers to seek antenatal care early and frequently. So delay 1 is basically persons showing up late. And by then, and believe me, it is a challenge. I toured Victoria Jubilee about a year ago. I've been there since, but just to look at a few of the concerns there and found a number of patients, according to doctors, who turned up either through acts of self-inflicted forced abortions or certainly attempts at it, and then having hemorrhaging and so on, and where their lives were at risk, and the doctors having to take corrective action, which could lead to some of that mortality data for the child at least. And in some instances, particularly experienced mothers, those who have had children before, turning up for the first time at the hospital to have the baby when the baby was literally coming out. So you don't know if the baby is upside down, you don't know if the umbilical cord is around the neck, as sometimes will happen, and it's high risk. And so part of the challenge as it relates to delay 1 is to try and educate, inform, persuade, motivate expectant mothers to attend clinic every month for the period leading up to pregnancy to delivery. And then, of course, understanding their particular issues, whether they are hypertensive, they're diabetic, if the baby is coming out, is being developed normally, so that it reduces the risk. So that's what delay 1 tries to address. Initiatives in response to delay 4, implementation of updated delivery books that capture near-miss cases data for analysis of serious pregnancies related to outcome. That's one of the initiatives. Development of clinical management guidelines to high priority pregnancy related conditions such as postpartum hemorrhage, cardiac disease, sepsis, obesity, sickle cell disease, hypertension in pregnancy, and things of this kind. Training in clinical management of emergency obstetrics conditions, including simulation exercise for postpartum hemorrhage, which is one of the frequent cause of maternal deaths. Institutional simulation sessions are being conducted quarterly currently. Introduction of the point of care butterfly ultrasound machine for obstetrics care to facilitate early detection and intervention of life-threatening conditions. That's a portable machine that is able to give you a quick read. Training in obstetrics ultrasound of radiologists and radiographers in collaboration with the Pan American Health Organization. That is ongoing, and monitoring and quality assurance through the site visits and auditing of maternal care services and promotion of blood donation drives. Normally, the need for blood is a big part of these complicated pregnancies. Understanding these factors, Madam Speaker, the ministry is implementing further interventions as outlined in the MOH National Strategic Plan for Maternal and Parental Health to achieve a more sustained reduction. So a lot is being done in recognition that there is a problem, and we don't deny that there is an issue, as others have, and so corrective action is being taken. Question 5, in the health facility maintenance unit, is the health facilities maintenance unit, HFMU, operating optimally and with full functionality? And B, if not, what is the current state of the HFMU? Currently, Madam Speaker, the health facilities maintenance unit is being transitioned from an operationally focused unit to a division mandated to formulate policies, strategies, and guidelines on health infrastructure development and management. Indeed, a gap analysis was done on the unit in 2023, which identified that there were deficiencies of a policy framework and oversight where infrastructure management and quality standards are concerned for the health sector. And I don't think we need to look much further than Cornwall, which literally collapsed after 50 years, 52 years, because of poor maintenance. And the same could be said for so many other of our health institutions. We've really had a chronic lack of maintenance, and these buildings come to a grinding halt, or units or departments of these buildings. And so we have had to correct that, which is what we're working on. In addition, with the growing demands of our healthcare system, coupled with the advancement in medical technologies, the ministry recognized the need for strategic infrastructure planning, optimizing infrastructure to ensure the highest level of service support at all aspects of the health system. Therefore, with approval from the Ministry of Finance and Planning, the ministry is transitioning the HFMU to a new dispensation, Madam Speaker, which is the Health Infrastructure Planning and Project Management Division. That's a new unit, and that unit will plan to maintain and to get the useful life of each piece of infrastructure that we put in place. We have already signed some service level agreements with the regional health authorities where they are required by policy to not just do fixing when the system is broken, but to do routine maintenance, which is what will reduce the sudden breakdown and, of course, the challenges of not being able to serve the public. In this new dispensation, the division will be responsible for providing high-level guidance on the development and management of health infrastructure, the development, implementation, and maintenance of central standards and quality framework that undergirds biomedical engineering, and health infrastructure planning, policy programs, and the delivery of projects. In addition, this new division will lead on the monitoring and evaluation of standards and procedures for biomedical equipment and of the health infrastructure maintenance. Within that framework, work has already commenced, Madam Speaker, colleagues. In 2023, the ministry implemented a new medical equipment management policy that addresses equipment maintenance issues affecting health service delivery. Additionally, several other standards to govern health infrastructure and facilities maintenance were developed and are currently in draft. These include health infrastructure building guidelines, built environment and electrical maintenance management manual, and the smart health facility policy, some of which is being implemented as we speak. So it's a real comprehensive approach, a change in the approach. And let's face it, this government is spending more money today to build out health infrastructure than any other government in recent memory. Um, and I don't think that's debatable. I mean, it's dollars and cents. We just launched a health center in members in Old Harbor, right? $930 million. That's under the IDB, World Bank, IDB, GOJ, and EU program. That is going to mean a comprehensive health center, more space, pharmacy, telemedicine, digitization, and Madam Speaker, we really should not be building out all of this and not have a maintenance arrangement. We must get value for money. It's the taxpayers' resources. So I'm sure the members on both sides will agree with me on this. So this is why we have had to use this approach. Further, in 2023-2026 service level agreements, which I mentioned earlier, that the ministry has with the region incorporates preventative maintenance as a critical standard for health facilities. We must maintain, we must not just fix when something is broken. Routine maintenance is going to be the new culture, and that's what we're aiming for. These actions are all geared towards strengthening the governance framework, ensuring standards for the regions in the maintenance of their facilities and equipment for improved maintenance and on-time and uptime of medical equipment. I have 3 more pages, Madam Speaker. I did say it was a lengthy response, but questions are many. C, has the HFMU been able to maintain the machinery and equipment so as to ensure the continuous and efficient delivery of healthcare in public hospitals in Jamaica? Madam Speaker, an objective response would be that there are a number of areas of deficiencies. But at the same time, I think we are improving with the new policies that are being advocated. And I don't want to give a false impression, but the truth is, now more than ever, we are sensitive to this and are taking steps to correct. With decentralization of health services, the 4 regional authorities, which are public bodies, were created with the responsibility for health service delivery across the 14 parishes. Indeed, within the RHA's functional organizational structure, there is a structure in place for maintaining machinery and equipment. Maintenance is the responsibility of regional maintenance units, headed by a director, operations and maintenance, with similar cascading roles down to the hospital facility level. As such, while the HFMU provides a technical support for assessment of maintenance requirements for medical equipment, development of equipment specifications and maintenance schedules to include both preventative and predictive maintenance, and some amount of standard setting, the administration of maintenance services across public health facilities, including hospital, relies at the regional level. The HFMU is in its current dispensation, carries out its function as best as possible with the resources that it currently has, ensuring that equipment and infrastructure meet safety and operational requirements and adheres to national and international standards for the healthcare facilities maintenance, and that the equipment is maintainable. As it relates to the PROMAC project, all machinery equipment were procured with maintenance contracts, which the HFMU commenced monitoring, therefore transferring this responsibility to the regions. We should know too that in another month or 2, we will announce the results of a tender process that for the first time we'll see as a general policy, the health services leasing equipment with a maintenance schedule and with a life cycle approach where the equipment will be depreciated over its useful life and then replaced. So we will no longer own the equipment, we will lease it, and those we are leasing it from will have to maintain it because we have had too much downtime because we don't have the internal technical capacity to manage. As of June 1, 2024, how many ICU and HDU beds were operational island-wide, not counting makeshift recovery room spaces? I could interpret this as almost a trick question, Madam Speaker, but I'll give the benefit of the doubt to the questioner. around makeshift recovery rooms. Anything that saves lives saves lives. And I did say in my previous responses that we do convert depending on the need and the peak demand at any point in time. So I wouldn't discount the value of so-called makeshift recovery rooms. As long as you recover, then it's a good thing. But nevertheless, the ICU offers the highest level of care for critical ill patients with multiple organ failure. The HDU, high dependency unit, is an intermediate between the ICU, intensive care unit, and the ward that offers increased care and support to patients who have failure or impending failure of one organ system. There are, Madam Speaker, some 87 functional critical care spaces, ICU and HDU beds. Of these, 53 are neonatal critical spaces, 34 are critical care adult spaces. Other critical care spaces are available in hospitals and can be used when equipment and staff are available. Some spaces will not function if equipment are out for repairs or maintenance, and this happens periodically. The shortage of critical care trained nurses, very important, Madam Speaker, affects the ability to maximize the use of these spaces. And, remember, it's a good question to ask, and the response, one has to take into consideration the context and the fact that a HDU or ICU unit doesn't operate in and of itself. The most important variable there would be the people who are manning it. And we do have a shortage of staff, which is why we have to take some more extreme decisions around how we train, how we recruit, and retain. 87 functional spaces, Madam Speaker, refers to spaces with ventilators. We can accommodate between 110 to 140 for ICU and HDU care. Very important distinction. I suspect it is between the 87 and 140 that the member is classifying as makeshift, but it serves a purpose. And indeed, anywhere in the world you go, you can adjust as the need arises, depending on the particular demand at that time. A limiting factor is the shortage of critical care nurses. In 2019, just to be clear, Madam Speaker, a review had shown that there were 24 functioning ICU and HDU spaces across the region. So if you want to compare now with back then, we're moving from 24 to at least 87, possibly 140. That is probably a 400 to 500% increase, which is a good thing in that shows that we're making progress in terms of the provisions. Now, the question is this enough? And the member asked that, what number of operation ICU and HDU bed does the minister consider to be necessary and acceptable for the population of Jamaica? 5 per 100,000 population, which would equate to 150, is the recommendation of the government anesthetist. Now, this recommendation is based on composite recommendations from critical care experts, which acknowledgement that this is within the constraints of resources limited environment. Now, so if you take the 150 that is being recommended as an ideal, and you say we can go up to 140, then we have to accept that there's a gap of 10 if you add the makeshift. No, well, I give greater value to the makeshift than you do. Your words, not mine. I say once it can save a life, it's worth it. And again, it is not unusual. But I will say, in keeping with the vision and the work of this government, that with the expansion of infrastructure that is underway, Jamaica will be able to meet this requirement of over 200 ICU and HDU spaces. So as we build out Spanish Town Hospital, Western Child and Adolescent, Cornwall Regional's Rehabilitation, Maypen Hospital, St. Anne's Bay, remember, we will in fact exceed what is considered the benchmark. And so we're moving in the right direction. And we're coming from a very far distance from where we were at 24. And I think the government should be commended and recognized for this. And I believe that, I am sure you will accept that as a positive member. And then the final question, well, actually it's two more, Madam Speaker. Has there been a significant has there been a significant increase in the MMR in the region for which the SARA is responsible? This is maternal mortality rate. Yes, however, increases were also noted in other health regions. Overall, Jamaica's maternal mortality ratio has shown a general increasing trend since this year 2000, while there has not been a consistent increase in the number of deaths because of the decreasing number of births, the ratio increased. So we have actually had a decline in births, but the ratio therefore would have gone up because the absolute number of births have reduced. 7A, has there been a significant increase in, no, sorry. B, if the answer is yes, what are the causes of such?
Do you know what's really fun? Making a website on Wix.
Hey, we're How Ridiculous, three childhood friends and digital content creators that do epic stuff from Perth, Australia.
Southern Regional Health Authority, yes, Southern Region, which is Manchester, Clarendon, St. Elizabeth. Causes were fairly similar for all health regions. There were no known causes unique to Southern Regional Health Authority that accounted for the outlier. Analysis of maternal deaths based on the 4 delays model, which I explained earlier, shows that the main avoidable factors are delay 1, where the patient did not recognize the problem early enough, and therefore there was a higher risk when they turned up at the institution, and delay 4, where the delay was in receiving appropriate care after presenting to the health facility. So many turned up in an emergency state, and the response would have had to be a higher risk procedure. And this unfortunately led to some of the deaths. General responses to address the issue, in keeping with your question. Regional maternal health forums were completed May to June 2024, that's this year, to meet with each health region to discuss their local situation and develop a consensus recommendation for urgent and ongoing action towards decreasing the maternal mortality rate and meeting the target for 2030. Procurement of a consultant is underway to lead to the review and revision of the National Strategic Plan for Maternal Health. So, in recognition of the challenge, Madam Speaker, we are trying to do something about it. And indeed, I will say that these challenges are not unique to us, even though one death is one too many. So we have to deal with it in our own way and ensure that we take corrective action. And we're attempting to do that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Responding will be the opposition leader, the member from St. Andrews Southern.
Thank you, Minister, for your extensive responses to the questions, and that is much appreciated. I have a number of follow-up questions for you. Firstly, I note in relation to question 2, which was to do with the doctors and nurses who have been trained under the PROMAC program and how many of them have left the health system. You couldn't give a definitive answer today, but you did admit that there has been some amount of attrition and so on. And I was wondering, my impression is that there is actually a fairly serious issue with a lack of doctors and nurses available for these high dependency units. And I was wondering why the government has not sought to bring in specialists from Cuba to address this specifically, because there have been instances in the past where specialists from Cuba have been brought in to address those kind of shortages. So I was wondering why that hasn't happened in this particular area. The other question I have, or the next question I have is in relation to question 3, to do with ambulances. And you indicated that there are 58 working ambulances across the regions now. And my question to you is this: how many of these 58 ambulances are actually used to transport patients? Because we're aware that ambulances are also used to transport supplies and hospital personnel. So how many of these 58 is actually available for transporting patients who need to be transported? In relation to question 7 and your answers to that, which is to do with the increase in maternal mortality rates, especially in the Southern Regional Health Authority. My understanding is that it's actually St. Elizabeth where this problem has been concentrated. And I wondered, you had said that there didn't appear to be any particular issue in southern versus the other regions, but I think in St. Elizabeth, there was a particular spike, which wasn't seen in Manchester or Clarendon. And I was wondering if you could find out why, what is the thinking as to why that would have occurred in St. Elizabeth, especially in 2021, where there was a noticeable spike. Also, in 2001, some 23 years ago or thereabouts, the maternal mortality rate in Jamaica was 89 persons per 100,000 live births. And in 2019, it moved from 89 to 163, nearly double, and that's pre-COVID. And in 2021, it had moved up further from 163 to 211 per 100,000 live births. So 89, 20 odd years ago, and in 2021, it moved up to 211 women, mothers dying in giving birth. And the trend really started in 2019, where that spike to 163 occurred. And I'm asking, why is this so? You know, PROMAC was initiated in 2013. It was a 5-year program, so it would have ended roughly in 2018, and should have caused a significant reduction in maternal mortality, yet we had this spike, which started in 2019 and intensified in 2021. And I was wondering, Minister, if apart from perhaps providing an explanation for that, if you could also indicate what were the rates of maternal mortality in Jamaica in 2022 and 2023. We don't have that data, but maybe you have it. And similarly, what were the rates of infant mortality in those 2 years, 2022 and 2023? And I see you're taking notes. I'm grateful for that, Minister, so you can answer the questions. And I was going to ask, with the situations that are on the ground, we have non-functional ventilators and we have some scrapped ventilators around the place. We have some broken elevators at Victoria Mutual and in Otter Bay. We have operating theaters without working air conditioning units at Bustamante, and I think you mentioned there's a situation there, and Savlamar as well, Public General Hospital. I am told there are 6 out of 7 anesthesia machines have broken down at UWI, at University Hospital of the West Indies, in this month alone. We have ambulances at Cornwall Regional that cannot respond to emergencies because they aren't roadworthy. We have broken CT scans and X-ray units at KPH. We have broken theater equipment at St. Anne's Bay Hospital, and we have a lack of working sterilization equipment island-wide, forcing surgery lists to be cancelled because of unclean instruments and drapes. Can you indicate whether there's a central problem of poor maintenance of equipment within the health system, manifesting in several ways and impacting patients across the island? Because those features that I just mentioned, which are happening now, so to speak, do indicate a very severe problem. And is there a comprehensive maintenance plan? You've indicated that there's a policy, a new approach to the maintenance policy, but what about the actual delivery of maintenance, the actual work that needs to be done to maintain, which has been delegated to the regions, but is that functioning? You know, what I've said indicates that there are problems, and is there a comprehensive maintenance plan? And if so, you know, when will it be announced? And the last question I have is the HMFU. Is it only tasked to monitor biomedical equipment across the regions? Which entity in the Ministry of Health monitors maintenance programs for elevators, central AC systems, and major electrical equipment such as generators and transformers, as opposed to biomedical equipment, which I think the HFMU is primarily focused on? Those are my questions, Minister. I don't know if any of my colleagues have any.
I'm just referring to the standing orders because I found that substantial questions were already asked, and I'm not necessarily hearing additional questions being asked for clarity. So, so I am gonna, as I said, opposition leader, I was just consulting the standing orders. Okay. So, Minister, you may now respond. I see the mic on the member from St. Mary Central. Seems to have a question as well.
Thank you for the guidance, Madam Speaker. Always appreciative. And you're correct. Some of these questions will require a written response. I don't have some of the data that you've asked for, but just to quickly run through attrition and the importance of having the people. You're right. You're correct. I mean, you're only repeating what we have said. Yes. In fact, a team was in Cuba last week, actually adding to the recruitment. We have over 300 Cubans here. But we're going beyond that, and I've spoken about that. We're going to the Philippines. We're talking to Nigeria. We're looking at speaking to India. The CMO is expected to be in the Philippines next month. So we are going to have to come to terms with a reality that we face, which is that we cannot train our people fast enough for them to be recruited elsewhere. And the more specialized they are, is the more they are recruited and offered all sorts of incentives, which is why we had the Barwin Scholarship to try and bond and hold some people back, at least for a period. So we can't argue on that. We have to join hands together and make it work, especially given the new capacities that we're expanding on. And Cuba will be and is one of the critical areas, but not only. The 58 ambulances and their purpose. We have given strict instructions that they should be confined to people movement. Now, I cannot say with absolute certainty that there isn't some breach at some point, because to do that would be to be monitoring them. No, ambulances, well, staff to the extent that they are needed to support a patient that is in the ambulance, but not beyond that. In fact, I will say last week, as we opened the Adelphi Clinic, we also unveiled 4 maintenance vehicles, Toyota vans, equipped with storage and so on, as part of the new dispensation to transition from the temptation to use the ambulances to transport either equipment or people without a patient. And last week we did that for the Western region. It is a discussion that will take place for the other regions. So we are working against that, and I don't think it is very common. The mortality rate in St. Elizabeth, I'll take a look at that. I can't comment. So that will be one of the written responses. But I know that the region and the ministry would have assessed and determined where the problems were. But I will be more specific on that once we get back to the data. Similarly, so the data on 2020 and 2022 and 2023, I'll provide that information also. The data you gave 20 years ago as opposed to now, I think I've sufficiently or tried to respond to that. Some of that would have been the last few years. COVID would have influenced some of that. The PROMAC program was not given an opportunity to prove itself because of the intervention of COVID. And I think we have to account for that also. Remember now, and we did say, some of those facilities were converted to be used as ICUs for persons suffering from COVID in an advanced state. So I think we have to accept that during those 3 years of COVID, there's an anomaly in terms of the concentrated focus. I know for St. Anne's Bay and Spanish Town, we had more adults there than children, and that was because of the priority on saving lives and using those equipment. So I think that could be one of the explanation, but not necessarily the entire. I'll get that information. The ventilators, you were asking about. Right. So as I've said in my response, member, we have to take a different approach, and we are taking a different approach. So the HMFU is going to dictate policy around all of these things. And that policy will filter down to the regional authorities for implementation, with the HMFU providing some sort of oversight. That's the vision. There's a lot of change management that's required in the expansion of our health facilities. We have to get people to think differently. I keep saying that modernization is not transformation. Transformation has to take place up here. People have to recognize the need for routine maintenance and so on. And that's what we're working on or working towards. It's not going to be easy, but the intention is to do that and apply to all. Your final question, I want to say has a little bit of mischief in it, and I don't want to be tempted to respond to a question based on false assumptions. You gave a whole shopping list of all sorts of problems. Until I can verify that those problems do exist, it would be wrong of me and misleading to respond. So maybe you can provide me with a written set of problems that you have identified. But that long shopping list to me sounds more that embedded in there somewhere is some mystery for me to answer what I don't know. What I will say, and it is a fact, that we have downtime all the time. Equipments are not expected to last forever, whether it's a motor car or it's a human being, if we don't engage in the same issues that we're discussing. So everyone that you have mentioned here is a possibility. It's unlikely and not a probability that it will all happen at the same time. And once it happens, we try to address it. And I think that is the best that can be expected as we work out the system to modernize it. But I'll provide the written answers for you for those questions that I can't respond to. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member from St. Mary Central, I spent the time to take a look again at the standing orders and, excuse me, because I know for sure, observing the mechanism we are applying in question and answer session is not quite correct. And opposition leader, I was in fact correct. It is past 3:15. You would need to seek permission of the speaker for the additional questions that you would like to pose if they are not for clarification. And it would be the same for any other individual wanting to stand up to ask additional questions. It actually has requirements for both the minister responding, not to have exceedingly long responses, and the minister after 3:15 is also required for all additional questions to be sent in writing. An hour after the session, the clerk is required to have those communicated to the minister. Yes, opposition leader. So, member from St. Mary Central, do you have any more questions for clarification, or do you have additional questions you would like to put to the minister?
Both, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I won't be long. Minister, you indicated that at Victoria Jubilee Hospital, to get the PROMAC HDU unit functioning there, you're currently using Victoria Jubilee. Yes, you're currently using split units. Is it not ideal that the central unit is what is required for these facilities because there's a possibility of infection? Second question, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I'll go back to St. Elizabeth, Mr. Minister, and you tabled this booklet in the Parliament in your sectoral presentation, which definitively indicated that St. Elizabeth was the major hospital in the southern region, which was having increased mortality. The truth, though, Minister, if you interrogate this book, you find that all the hospitals in parishes such as Trelawney, in Portland, in St. Elizabeth, which does not have the facilities of qualified doctors, you have an increase in mortality rate. The Minister, you indicated also, as a third question, that the delay model that you mentioned in terms of accessing service, which leads to increased mortality, maternal mortality. In most cases, it had to do with hospital care, which is tier 4, for the fourth level. You did indicate in your presentation what some of the measures are to be utilized to cure that. However, if that is the case, as you have mentioned, why is it primarily confined to St. Elizabeth then, if these are some of the things that are missing? St. Elizabeth, why is it, why do we have this increased numbers in St. Elizabeth? And you're doing this as a general thing. Understandably, you're doing it generally, but it means that there's a deficit in St. Elizabeth why we have these numbers. And finally, yes. And Minister, the final question is the, well, it was asked already in terms of procuring specialized nurses and doctors.
Go ahead, Lee.
In the analysis of the responsiveness to the problems of maternal mortality and so on, the different delay structures that you have, I was wondering in relation to delay 1 and the responses to deal with that, why there wasn't a, for example, in 5th form or 6th form, in why young ladies are not given some information around, you know, in years to come when motherhood ensues, how they ought to address these issues. Because, yeah, antenatal care and so on, because it seems to me that that would be a captive audience who would be receptive to learning and could carry that information forward, even into their own communities and for their own benefit later on. Yeah.
Madam Speaker, thank the members for this. So let me be quick on this. The first question raised by the member from the parish of St. Mary, the lovely parish of St. Mary, you're right, a central unit is the desired position, and split units do have the potential higher risk. And in fact, there's a debate taking place now at Victoria Jubilee around that, in that some of the doctors are very uncomfortable. I am uncomfortable, but I have suggested to them, to the team, that they should find a way to make it work until we can get the ideal with special provisions if necessary for the cleaning and so on. Now, I know there's a risk, like everything else, but we have a problem in this country with our service, our equipment service providers. And in fact, I have given instructions to the extent that persons have service contracts and are not fulfilling them, and I won't go into specifics on company, that we explore the possibility of going to court and take some action against some of these companies. Because you have companies where you have an agreement with them to install and to maintain, and we have more downtime than we have working time. Not to mention the fact that they spend more time not stocking the tools here, the parts, they stock it abroad, which essentially is shifting the risk to the patient and to the hospital and to the health system, rather than them taking on that risk by having parts here so that they can provide when we have downtime. So invariably you have these 3-week, 1 month, 2 months wait because a part has to be manufactured in Germany and so on. And I think it's unfair. And I think we have to now take a collective position on this, and I've instructed that. So the real reason for Victoria Jubilee not up and running is because we have not been able to get the central air system working, and that is a direct function of the technical capacity, which is outsourced to provide that support. And I'm not shifting the blame here because I'm not pleased about it, but it is a reality that we're going to have to face, which we're working on through some of these service level agreements. The second question about not just about St. Elizabeth. Remember, you've answered the question while still asking on St. Elizabeth, which is fine. As I said in my response, it is not unique to Southern region. There are other areas, as you have mentioned, that have a similar.
Whatever you do it for less at Harbor Freight.
the 4 delay model, you misinterpreted my response. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that it was a misinterpretation, because my response was clear that the primary cause of mortality would be 1 and 4. So 1 meaning late appearance at the health institutions. And then, of course, the treatment that were received when you had late appearance. This is from my answers. So those two may be connected, because if the risk is higher, yes. Yes.
I was actually quoting from your presentation by documents from the Ministry of Health, which clearly indicated that level 4 was the greater of the two.
Okay. Fair enough. But the point I'm making is, which is probably logical to deduce, that if you come in and present late, you automatically qualify as a higher risk pregnancy. And therefore, the risk of the worst happening, unfortunately, happens. So you tend to move the numbers up, even with the hospital care, because of late presentation. So it's a matter of prevention versus cure. And I think we have to do more. Which leads me to the last question that the opposition leader raised about training high schoolers. It's a very delicate balance, very delicate balance. And I tell you why. You know, sex education in the school system is fraught with controversy, because there is an interpretation, which I'm sure you do not intend, that we are at a stage of young teens, 15, 16, maybe 17, teaching them about having children and maybe encouraging them to have children. Now, there are arguments to support a discussion around taking care of yourself and family planning and that sort of thing. But you have to be very careful that we don't appear to be promoting, even with the declining population, and you have heard my comments on that, saying to young people, who some of whom are below the age of consent, that they must ensure that they go to the health center when they are pregnant, almost insinuating that somehow we are enhancing or supporting early determination of that activity and that fact, because that could be quite counterproductive, as you would appreciate.
Thank you, Minister. House Leader, we have gotten to the end of questions and answers to questions. Members, has been a long session. Let me just finish up, House Leader. Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice. We have none. Motions relating to the sitting of the House. Motions for leave to introduce bills. Presentation of bills without leave of the House. First obtain public business. House Leader,
Just ahead of your intervention, I'd like to just indicate that public business, that it was intended for us to have dealt with some matters in relation to the Ministry of Finance, but we will have those ready for the next sitting of the House in terms of the specific areas that for procurement and so on, which the minister had indicated. Madam Speaker, the House needs to be further advised. And normally I would do this on the motion of adjournment, but the Deputy House Leader might very well be sitting at that time for me. So I will just make that statement now, that the continuation of the state of constituency debate will resume on the 29th, and that in keeping with our intention to ensure that the debates are concluded in time for the budget call, we are going to increase the number of members who would make presentations on the date. So we're looking at possibly 4 members per Tuesday leading up to the end of. And also, so as to ensure that there is ample time for private members' motion, before the close of this session, we would want to ensure even a greater efficiency, as you know, of the use of our time during this period. So, Madam Speaker, that being said, I ask you to continue with the agenda.
House Leader, one member wrote requesting to make a personal statement on adjournment. We seek leave of the House. Permission granted, member.
I seek permission, Madam Speaker, to speak on the motion for adjournment.
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Put down, Connie. Madam Speaker, the statement released by the Integrity Commission in response to my request in Parliament that an audited report be laid in the Parliament before any more funds are made available to them, and that they must be held accountable just like any other ministry, department, and agencies. The annual audit report referred to by the Integrity Commission in its release is a mere financial statement of the Integrity Commission, financial transaction, and financial position, as it is not an audit of this critical government agency. What I demanded is a full compliance value for money audit of the Integrity Commission.
Member. May I take a look at the statement you're reading there, member, versus what you supplied?
I wanted to be clear because the members started by speaking about a statement on the adjournment of the sitting, but you had mentioned it's a personal statement.
The member made a request for a personal statement to be made prior to the sitting of the House today. I reviewed the statement and made certain suggestions as to items that should be removed from said statement by the member, which took some time. The member is being allowed to make the personal statement as it is in response to comments made by him in the House, and about him, which he would want to seek leave of the House to have clarified. And so the leeway is being granted to the member to do so. So, member, I wasn't hearing you very clearly when you started, and I want to ensure that you do not utter one word that you had not sought permission to have approved prior to commencement. And I would like to be able to follow along. So, member, could you please start? Member, could you please start at the beginning? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The statement I'm making is because of reference that was made about me publicly in the public domain. So I wanted to respond to that. And I said, let me start there. The statement released by the Integrity Commission in response to my request in Parliament that an audited report be laid in Parliament before any more funds are made available to them. And they must be held fully accountable, just like any other ministry, department, and agencies. The annual audit report referred to by them as in their release is a mere financial statement of the Integrity Commission financial transaction and financial position, and is not an audit of this critical government agency. What I demanded is a full compliance value for money audit of the Integrity Commission to audit and examine its management and administrative control, security control, information technology control, external and internal controls, human resources practices, policies and procedures, and oversight procedures of the Integrity Commission. Financials, the focus here. Financial statement audit focuses on the accuracy and completeness and presentation of financial data, ensuring compliance with accounting principles such as international financial reporting. Value for money audit focuses on 3 E's: economy, minimizing cost; efficiency, maximizing output from resources; and effectiveness, achieving intended outcome. It looks at operational performance rather than just financial accuracy. Financial statement audit involves detailed testing of transaction, balances, and disclosure within the financial statements. Auditors examine documents, verifying calculations, and check compliance with regulations. Value for money audit involves reviewing programs, projects, and procedures to evaluate how well resources are managed. Auditors analyze performance metrics, review operation, and interview stakeholders to assess the effectiveness and efficiencies of the resource utilization. Financial statement audit results in an audit opinion on the fairness and accuracy of financial statements. Value for money audit provides recommendation on how the organization can improve its operation to achieve better value for money, often with emphasis on public sector accountability. A financial statement audit ensures the reliability of financial reporting, while a value for money audit focuses on operational performance and the prudent use of resources. The Auditor General serves as a commissioner of the Integrity Commission, and is therefore not independent of Integrity Commission, and is complicit in what is being perpetrated by the Commission, and should know that what was provided to Parliament by the Commission is not an audit report as is required. I have stated repeatedly and supported by legal research, the inclusion of the Office of the Auditor General as a member of the Commission compromises the constitutional role, function, and duties of the Auditor General as is set out in Section 120, 121, and 122 of the Constitution of Jamaica, and the Financial Administration Audit Act. The role and function, duties, and responsibility of the Auditor General are spelled out in Part 4 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act. The Constitution and the Financial Administration Audit Act make it abundantly clear that the role of the Auditor General is to audit all organs and bodies of the state, and is constitutionally required to present the auditing report to Parliament. It is inconsistent with the foregoing constitutional provision, and indeed would compromise the Office of the Auditor General in its performance of the duties and the carrying out of the office's responsibilities for the persons occupying that constitutional position to sit on. Be an internal part of and participating in the deliberation of a body which the Auditor General is required by the Constitution to audit. Furthermore, the Auditor General is constitutionally required to present the audit report to Parliament. It is clearly untenable for the Auditor General to carry out an audit of a commission of Parliament of which the Auditor General is a member. The foregoing interpretation of Section 122
a statement of a personal nature must not be one that provokes controversy in its nature. And to get into the issue of the constitutionality of the role of the Auditor General in relation to the operations of the Integrity Commission. And in fact, the member last week when he spoke, it wasn't about the operational efficiency of the Integrity Commission. It was about the non-tabling of audited statements. So I think he's gone way out of the bounds of what is permissible under a private statement.
Thank you, House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I think we're not making a controversy of we're not making a controversy at all of the point of order that the member actually spoke. I'm indicating, however, that the right of the member to make a statement in relation to matters that are of personal importance and interest to him is preserved in this honorable house. And therefore, I think it is correct that he should be allowed to complete his statement.
No, the speaker made every effort to read the statement in its entirety before allowing the member to proceed. So the speaker would have ruled once the member is reading what was previously approved for so doing.
The foregoing interpretation of Section 122 of the Constitution of Jamaica is clearly correct as subsection 4, subsection B of Section 122 states that the Auditor General is to be audited and reported on by the Minister of Finance. All the reports of ministries, departments, and agencies are required to be tabled in Parliament, not audited financial statements. Financial statements do not speak to the procurement procedures of the Integrity Commission. The performance audit that looks at an entity's overall operation and its effectiveness, and an audit report generated which contains the auditor's opinion or concern. What I asked for was a value for money audit, given the billions of dollars being spent by the Integrity Commission. This year alone, they were given over $2 billion.
Member, that is not in the statement.
Yes, if you look at the bottom, I've written that there. They want to give you. The Auditor General, being a commissioner, places us in a position where the Auditor General, who is one to conduct such an audit, cannot do so in the case of the Integrity Commission due to this conflict of interest. What this means is that the auditor, to conduct the value for money audit, must be selected by the Parliament Oversight Committee and not the Integrity Commission itself. All the posturing, misinformation, misleading statements, or the denigration of members of Parliament and insult by the chairman of the Integrity Commission can never and will never deter me from demanding an audit report for the Integrity Commission before any more funds are provided by Parliament to this entity. As a duly elected member of this honorable house, representing the interest of the people of Jamaica, I will speak my mind fearlessly, but respectfully, regardless of the disrespect or misrepresentation that others may attempt to insinuate. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
House Leader.
Speaker, it's not intended to do any further business today. I therefore beg to move that the House be adjourned until Tuesday, October 29, when we will have the continuation of the State of Constituency debate. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, House Leader. Members, the question is that this honorable House do now adjourn for Tuesday, the 29th of October at 2 p.m. sharp, where the State of the Constituency debate continues. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This honorable House now stands adjourned.
Mr. Everett Warmington has no moral authority to be speaking about integrity or anything that he just said in the parliament. He has no moral authority. He should not be in the parliament whatsoever. He's a disgrace to the Jamaican people. He's a disgrace to the parliament of this country. And he should be sacked from the parliament. He has no moral authority to speaking about integrity or on integrity commission. He is a part of the integrity. He's a part of the oversight committee of parliament that signed off on the auditing of the integrity commission. He has no moral authority to be speaking. None. Anyway, we all have a good afternoon, everyone. This man is a disgrace to the parliament of this country. Have a good afternoon, everyone.